Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, a nationally ranked community-focused bank with over 30 locations throughout Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, and North Carolina. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
Hello, Tech fans, and welcome into episode 427 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Preseason football practice is underway ahead of the 2025 season, and we'll get you all caught up on all of the storylines and buzz around the Virginia Tech program. That's all coming up on episode 427 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We're recording on Thursday, August 7th, 2025 from our now super high-tech studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. More on that in a sec. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, David Cunningham. Across the way to my right is lead analyst and columnist Chris Coleman, and our senior staff writer and lead football beat writer Andy Bitter is to my left. As always, Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing the show. It is our final audio-only podcast before the set is finished and we're back on camera, and the set looks terrific. I know people can't see it because this is audio-only, but there are pictures out on social media. This looks awesome.
It's actually a high-tech studio now.
Yes.
Just imagine lasers and robot. Okay, maybe not that high-tech, but no, it's pretty sharp.
Nick, you want to fill some people in on just kind of what it looks like and what the process went into it is and how excited you are to get this thing up and running?
Yeah, it's been a lot of hard work. We started, I believe, June 3rd, and now it's August 7th, so it's been a 2-month project, and it looks like a 2-month project. It looks great. We're very proud of it. We'll be starting video podcasts, like you said, next Thursday. We'll have another camp update video, and then, of course, on Wednesday, this is what I'm excited about. It's going to be a lot of work, but it'll be exciting. We'll have a time-lapse video on YouTube where you can watch us run around like little worker bees and tear down the old set and build the new set, and then we'll have Will do like a little intro to it and showing around some up close and personal pictures. But it's been a long time coming, and we're so excited to show it off, and hopefully it becomes appointment television every time we post a podcast for people.
I just hope the fire marshal doesn't come in and see the other room.
Yeah, don't. If you're watching, do not come.
It has looked like a storage locker for a while. There's
Yeah.
like a mattress out there for some reason.
Honestly,
I don't quite understand what that's about.
That's why I'm most excited for this thing to be over with, is so I can tackle the other room and make sure that's cleaned up. Because right now it's like you said, it's pretty cluttered.
We can bring people in to be on the podcast set, like, look how nice this is, and there's like a trash room right next to it.
The mattress has actually always been here. It was just behind
I
the
know,
other
it's
set.
just weird. It's on the table now. That table is sort of my office.
That's a Will.
Because I work in the main room there sometimes.
That's a Will Stewart story for another time. But this looks really, really nice. 2 TVs, LEDs. Super pumped. Next Thursday is going to be the first video podcast. Shout out Nick, Will Stewart, Carter Hill, even Nick's dad, who came in and helped a little bit. I've tried to help Nick out as much as I can. It's been a long process, and Nick got married in the middle of it, but it looks really, really nice, and it's coming along really, really well. So anything else on podcast, Nick? Nope. Nick says we're good. All right. Well, with that, let's get into the football discussion. Today is Thursday. On Wednesday, yesterday, we had Media Day. Chris, we'll start with you. Anything stand out from any of your conversations yesterday? Just general overview stuff from Media Day and football camp so far.
I went around and asked all the veterans, like the returning players, who they thought their top newcomer was on each side of the ball. I said, name one player on each side of the ball. And the general consensus of opinion is offensively, it's Snook Peterkin. I've just called him Peterson.
Snook Peterkin.
Snook Peterkin. True freshman wide receiver from North Carolina. A highly touted guy. Technically also a member of the basketball team. So we'll see how that unfolds over time. But apparently just a really smooth, natural receiver. I want to say probably 50% or more of the people I asked name him as their top newcomer. Defense, it was a lot more split. There's so many new faces on that side of the ball, all over the place at every position. But Peterkin seemed to be the number one name that was put out there by all the returning players on the offensive side.
You think he'll play? I don't think so.
I don't think he will. He's really skinny.
I was also trying to think of what other offensive player they would name, because the quarterbacks are way down the depth chart. They didn't sign any new running backs, correct?
Well,
Freshman
I said
Overton's hurt. Overton's hurt.
I told them, each one of them specifically, I said, you could name freshman or you could name transfer portal.
Okay.
So I left it open as far as that.
And there are a lot of transfers.
There's a lot of transfers.
If Peterkin, you can tell when you look at him, you go, that is a freshman, because he is very skinny.
Yeah, he's like Trey Turner build as far as skinny goes.
I remember how Trey Turner contributed that first year. It was not a lot for the start of the year. I mean, he had like big catches, I think, early on against like Florida State.
He did.
And stuff like that. But then end of the year is when he really shined. It's like when you've been in a weight room for a while like that. So maybe it's a similar case like this. This receiving room is a little bit deeper than that one they had in 2018, I believe. So maybe more of a chance later in the year than the start of the year, I would imagine, with him. But it's tough to say right now.
Yeah, Peterkin, he's a freshman from Winston-Salem, Mount Tabor. Shamarius Snook Peterkin, 6'3", 174. So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
A little skinny.
Yeah, so a little bit taller than Trey Turner was, but similar build.
Andy, what stood out to you so far, whether it's prize comments, any comments from yesterday, or just fall camp overview?
Yeah, it's a lot of talking.
Preseason
still.
camp, sorry.
Yeah, it's preseason camp. Let's be clear about that. No, it's... I don't know. You cover enough of these things, you sort of hear the same quotes all the time. And I feel like the Virginia Tech fan base is past the point of talk, even though you can still hear the coaches say this stuff. Like, man, I'm pumped for the season now. Like, you can talk yourself into anything when you start hearing these quotes every year. And it's, you got a very colorful quote from Emmett Laws about running in the offseason, and Jared Ferguson running them like we won't say it on the podcast, but when you hear stuff like that, you're like, oh man, they got these boys right. They're going to be ready for this. I still don't really know how this team is going to be this year. Just haven't seen anything at practice that would tell us that. We haven't seen a single 11-on-11 rep. So, and like they're running through these individual drills and ball security stuff. It's like, sure, they could look better. I don't know if they're going to play better. So a lot of this is all talk right now. I kind of focused my attention on Terrian Stewart yesterday. He was somebody who enrolled over the summer. He wasn't here in the spring, so we never had a chance to talk to him. So I'm like, first chance to go talk to Terrian Stewart, and it was a very good interview. He is a stocky guy. I described him as a bowling ball type body, and Price said, you said it, I didn't say it. It's like, well, you clearly agreed with it the way that you're smiling about this. I mean, he is a stacked dude for, not the tallest guy, but I mean, you look at his arms and he's just jacked. And you look at his missed tackles forced last year, and I think he was 4th nationally on a per carry basis, even a little bit ahead of Tootin on that list. He's behind 2 other guys than Ashton Jonty. So, no shame in being behind the Heisman Trophy runner-up last year. But I think he's a really interesting addition to this team, just because, who's going to be the power runner? Seems like he is. Now, I don't know if that means he's going to be the starter, and it sounds like Marcellus Hawkins is doing very well. I mean, he was brought up by several people yesterday, leaned up a little bit in the offseason. I think he's down 10 or 15 pounds, maybe a little bit faster. Does maybe things better in an all-around sense that Stewart might, but when you need a yard and you line up Stewart and Drones in the backfield, and I'm sure there's going to be some sort of little option game involved there, it's like either one seems like a good option to get that 1 yard. So he'll be an interesting one to watch. I enjoyed talking to him.
So Stewart, he's wearing number 8 this year. He wore 4 at Bowling Green.
He's got to update his chain.
Yeah, he got a chain.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got a double chain.
And I said you got to put ×2 or something like that on your chain to get the correct uniform number right now.
He's 5'9", 222.
Scott Leffler, his coach at Bowling Green.
So I was going to bring that quote up.
He, when Terrian Stewart was contacted by Virginia Tech after winning the portal, Leffler, who's now quarterback's coach for the Eagles, said, I think Virginia Tech would be a very good place for you. So a little credit to a former offensive coordinator at Virginia Tech here. He described him in a story at the Toledo Blade as a steroid gerbil, which I guess is the work of, according to Stewart, he's like, oh, that came from Greg Nozal. Because Greg Nozal, former Hokies offensive lineman who lost the tip of his finger in a game. I remember that was a story that went on for a long time. He is the run game coordinator and I think offensive line coach at Bowling Green, or was under Leffler. and still is there. But he's like, oh man, he started with all the short jokes. It's like he's 5'4". It's like 5'4", that's disrespectful. Like, no, I'm not 5'4", but they called him a steroid gerbil, and Stewart got a kick out of that when I showed him the quote in that story. So. Daboli, steroid gerbil, whatever you want to call him, he's a load of a back. He'll be an interesting one to watch, I think.
So I think he's 5'8", just standing right across from him. I'm 5'8", and
5'9". He's listed as 5'9".
Right.
That felt generous.
Right.
5'4" was disrespectful.
So like
he's not 5'4".
He's the same height as me plus 60 pounds.
His arms.
Insane.
There's a picture that somebody took of me interviewing him. It's like, why do you have to get both of our arms in the same picture? Come on, that's disrespectful.
I think it was Ivan.
Yeah,
Ivan yesterday was like,
he's like, look at this, look at your little tiny arm. Compared to his arms, of course
his arm is bigger than your head.
Yeah, so I mean, he's a built dude, and it's not just like, oh, he runs 5 yards and falls down. He had like a 63-yard run, a 70-yard run last year too. So I don't think he's going to be winning many, sprint offs that they might have in the running back room. But I think, and I wrote this in the story, and it's the Moneyball quote, is that, you can't replace Bashal Tootin with a single guy, but it's sort of been Tech's philosophy this offseason. Like, how can we recreate these guys in the aggregate? And, you look at Terrion Stewart, power back, Marcellus Hawkins, kind of an all-around guy, Braden Bennett's pass catching skills out there as a receiver. PJ Prelude, shifty guy, pass catching as well. Coney seems like just sort of a consistent back. Tyler Mason's got a lot of upside as a redshirt freshman. I think there's a lot to like in that room, even if you don't look and go, well, there's an obvious star here who's going to get 250 carries like Bashal Tootin.
No, only 3 of them are going to play, most likely, is what Price
Probably.
said.
I mean, there's a limit to what you can do with running backs and getting guys in a rhythm. And you put that quote out there and people are like, oh, here we go again, rotating backs. It's like, well, you got to do that if you don't have a star. Like last year, they didn't rotate because why would you take Bashal Tootin off the field for any reason unless he's hurt? That's the only reason you take him off the field.
And even then, they still use him as a decoy rather than give somebody else the football.
Yeah, that's true.
Chris, I thought it was very funny. So you wrote your running back preview yesterday.
Yeah.
And one of the things you said in there was you were like, I think Marcellus Hawkins is probably the most well-rounded back. And then Brent Pry literally said that
15 minutes after the article
and I
got
turned
published,
around and looked at you. What do you make of just all the different kind of skill sets in this running back room?
Yeah, I like it. I think when you look at a guy like Braden Bennett, he's got over 70 career catches. And his yards per carry is actually slightly higher than Terrion Stewart for his career. I think Bennett's is 6.1 and Terrion Stewart was at 5.9. Combined, I doubt there's too many teams out there that have the combined production at the FBS level between those two guys. Now, you're not going to see Stewart contributing much in the passing game. He's only played about 120 snaps or so in the passing game in his career. He only has 5 career catches. He was only asked to pass block 16 times last season for Bowling Green. Some of those guys that are like as wide as they are tall, they don't have the greatest lateral movement, and sometimes they have trouble like turning their body and being really fluid, like in catching the football and things like that. So I wouldn't expect to see him involved on third downs very much unless it's third and short. I think Marcellus Hawkins is a guy. It's really tough to scout a guy coming from the Division II level. It's a big difference between that level and FCS or lower level FBS. But, he was a guy who had a big season 2 years ago and also caught 25 or 30 passes. So I think he's a guy who he's the guy in the middle of Bennett and Stewart. And I use that. I guess well-rounded was the term I used, I think, or something similar to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the case. It wouldn't surprise me if he started, actually. But I think all 3 of those guys are gonna play.
How about PJ Prelude?
Yeah.
10 months removed from an Achilles injury.
Yeah.
And I don't know the severity of the Achilles, but like partial tear, full tear, whatever it was, but 10 months, regardless of partial or full tear, that's impressive.
It is, and he
to
could
come
be the
back
kickoff returner.
And he's full speed. There's no restrictions on him right now. I mean, I was talking to Elijah Brooks. He's like, when I was playing, that was like a year 2 years, maybe career-ending type thing, and now somebody's coming back in 10 months like that. It kind of shows you how focused he was in his rehab and returning. So you remember right before he got injured at Stanford, he started to have a little bit bigger role in this offense. He had 5 carries at the end of the Marshall game. He had that 61-yard touchdown run against Miami called back for a bogus holding call. I mean, you look at the play and it's like, come on now. That was a bad call. And I mean, he looked fast and he looked explosive, and you wonder if it's the same coming off that injury, if he's at that same level. Probably not, but you can work up to that, and 90% of that explosiveness from last year is still pretty good. So I think coming back like that so quickly, it'll be interesting to see how they use him and in what capacity they use him. But he's another weapon on this offense they could find a spot for.
Yeah, Elijah Brooks said he can kind of play a little bit of anywhere. Chris, you also wrote about quarterbacks the other day. It's not like there's a whole lot to talk about with quarterbacks, but it is everybody always wants to talk about the quarterbacks. Yeah. And it's the Kyron Drones, Phil Montgomery, how they mesh deal, right? You've got Pop Watson and Garrett
Rangel,
apparently, fighting for the
man's from Texas, and his name is spelled Wrangle, and he pronounces it Rangel.
And Tech
That's just wrong.
And Tech didn't even include him in their pronunciation guide.
No, they do.
They do now?
He's not in the pronunciation guide, but they have this thing now on their website where it's a pronunciation audio thing.
Oh, I was thinking about the printed out roster that they gave the media.
It's each player pronouncing their name.
Right.
So if you ever want to hear it, from the mouths of the players themselves. Some of them are like, I think we don't need one for John Love. Thank you. John Love? How do you pronounce that?
We're going to Louvre.
It is Garrett Rangel.
Yeah. So he and Pop Watson are battling for the QB2 job, and obviously he came from Oklahoma State. But Chris, what do you just make of the Kyron Drones, Phil Montgomery? They have to mesh thing. I mean, it seems like this is what Virginia Tech's entire offense is riding on this year.
Oh, I definitely think that's true, and it's interesting because I don't know that Montgomery has had a quarterback with Drones' skill set before, with his exact skill set. Because Montgomery, he's had a couple of guys that rush for 400 or 500 yards during the season, but nobody like Drones. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how Drones adjusts to Montgomery's style of passing, and it'll be probably even more interesting, and it's probably more important to how does Montgomery adjust his offense to the strengths and weaknesses of Kyron Drones. I think if that meshes well together, Virginia Tech can have a good year. Look, you have to use Kyron Drones' legs, and I know there's a thought process in the fan base that Tech ran him into the ground, and that's why he got hurt last year, and that's simply not true. I mean, his original injury happened in practice during non-contact. And his other 2 injuries happened in a game when he shouldn't have been playing because of the original injury. So you have to lean. That's one of the top strengths of the offense is his legs, and you have to lean on that. And I'm not saying he needs 175, 200 carries, something like that, but that's got to be a part of the offense. And Montgomery has shown the ability when he's got a quarterback who can run to scheme up some things for him. But I don't think he's ever had a quarterback who runs as well as Drones. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
I think it's like all things. You got to be judicious with how much you run your quarterback. I mean, you can't put him in bubble wrap out there because that's a weapon for this offense. But you're also like, be smart. And don't call a bunch of just direct runs for the quarterback, or the defense sort of forces things with the read play like that. But you can't just call 20 of those in a game where the quarterback's going to keep it all the time and expect him to come out of there feeling fine.
And when you're up 3 touchdowns against Wofford by the end of the second quarter, stop running him, right? Little things like that.
But is that a prediction of what it's going to be in the Wofford
I think it'll be worse than that.
I don't know. Wofford is the cradle of coaches, apparently. Sam Siefka's from there, a couple other guys from the staff.
Mike Young.
There you go. Yeah.
More on Wofford.
Don't disrespect the Terriers. Like
more on Wofford later, because Sam Siefka's brought it up yesterday. I thought in your quarterback just position preview, you kind of broke down like all Phil Montgomery's quarterbacks since like 2012 at Baylor, which included a guy like Bryce Petty. Drones has a little bit of a much different skill set. But Andy, when we talked to Pry last week, I mean, he was like first day of camp is like full of praise for Kyron Drones. I mean, he called him rhythmic and consistent and sharp. It seems like he kind of hit the ground running after his injury.
Yeah, that was nice of him to do that because we didn't get to see the practice. So I needed an angle, and he gave it to us. And, I'll take his word for it. We didn't see him practice at all. I don't know if that's the coach just propping up his quarterback. Knowing Pry, I don't think that's the case in this whole thing. But, we were talking about this before the podcast. We were looking at a little part of the new podcast says we have this cool TV that can show like highlights and stuff like that. So Nick was showing us this Kyron Drones highlight package. And, here it is right now. He's going to cue it up for us here.
Nobody can
Folks,
see it,
you
but
can't
this is
see
great.
this, but this is amazing.
This is awesome.
This is incredible.
Okay, Nick-
Kyron Drones warming things up.
Oh, Nick-
Okay, but, you look at Drones physically this year compared to what he was last year. He looks leaned out. He looks in a lot better shape, and all these guys do. Perhaps that is Jared Ferguson running them like a.
That's like my favorite play right there from last season.
You play the stiff arm?
Like
yeah.
I don't know if he like took it to heart last year. It's like I'm the big running quarterback who's going to run you over, something like that. But I think he looks leaner this year, and I don't know if that was a targeted thing that the coaches wanted for him, just to you stay healthier if you're a little bit more in shape like that.
Do you remember
or they
Pry's
just wanted him
quote?
to get quicker about it. I don't.
Pry said the team is leaner this year, but not necessarily lighter.
Yeah, I was going to bring that
Right.
up.
So maybe that's just everybody getting in shape. Maybe that's Kyron being dedicated about his body and how he wanted to look coming into this year. But I think he looks lighter on his feet out there, which can help. I mean, you don't need to be the big bruising guy if you can have other people to do it for you, and they might with some of these running backs in the room. So that might be something interesting to watch.
I think not the biggest thing, but one big thing I'll be watching is how does the read option look this year? Like last year, it was Drones was the inside option and Tootin was the outside option. Well, Terrion Stewart is very much an inside runner. So when he's in the game, who's the outside option? Is it going to be Drones or Stewart, or could they run somebody in motion and make it a triple option type deal? I think it's pretty obvious. Braden Bennett can be an outside option. We haven't seen Marcellus Hawkins really run yet because there's not any highlights to go on. So really, to me, is who's the outside option, who's the inside option when each one of these individual running backs is in the game, because it could be different for each one of them. I guess it is nice to have a room with various skill sets, but at the same time, you don't want to get to the point where it's like, oh, Braden Bennett's in the game, so we know his option runs are going to be to the outside as opposed to Terrion Stewart's are going to be on the inside. You don't want to get it to that point. There's always going to have to be a mix, but you do have to lean on the strengths of each player and also try to avoid their weaknesses as much as possible.
And we didn't get to see inside run this year, unfortunately. The last 2 years, they've let us see the first inside run period of August. And somebody's gotten ejected from each time. Maybe it was the first year with Pry that Johnny Dixon got ejected.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think, it was
then
the
last
first
year was Keyshawn Burgos got ejected. So I was joking with Pry at practice. I'm like, you're not letting us see inside runs. Like, you're going to have to tell us who gets ejected this year the next time we talk to you. So,
but they've teased us. Like, when they've kicked us out of practice, the two open ones, like the very next drill is inside runs.
It's purposeful that
Yes.
they're not letting us see that. But so a little disappointed we don't get to go out there and watch that.
Chris, you teased a little bit of the Brent Price comments that Virginia Tech is leaner this year, and I wanted to bring back up Emmett Law's quote, which he told you and Nick Brown, and essentially said, explaining why Jared Ferguson, how Jared Ferguson's made such an impact, and he said, ran us like MFers.
Right.
That was his straightforward quote.
He didn't
was
say
like, wow.
MFers. He used the real word.
Yes, but what do you just make of the impact that Ferguson has had on this team so far? Because it's not like guys are necessarily, in terms of their actual mass, that they're that much different, but it seems like they're in better shape.
I mean, I do think all of that is legit. And I know some people thought that firing Galt was kind of a scapegoat type deal. I disagree with that. I remember reading a Brandon Patterson article shortly after Galt was hired, and Brandon noted that he thought Old Dominion ran out of gas late in games, and it didn't seem like their players were in shape. And then that happens to Virginia Tech when Galt is here. So I think that's legit. I think you can trace that to two different places, and so I do think it's going to be an improvement with Ferguson. I think from the strength and size standpoint, I think you can see a little bit of a difference, but generally, as far as the weight room stuff goes, it takes 2 to 3 years to make a really big impact there, because you don't just turn a guy into a chiseled beast overnight, right? But you can make huge strides in conditioning in a much shorter amount of time than you can. So to me, Ferguson will have a short-term impact on conditioning, but on the strength side of it, it'll be a longer-term impact.
Galt would seem like a very nice guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I've ever encountered somebody that nice as a strength coach.
Just very laid back
I'm not
and chill.
saying I've talked to Mike Gentry a lot, and pleasant guy to talk to. Jared Ferguson too, kind of soft-spoken guy like that. But they also look like they're like, you don't want to mess with this guy. Jared Ferguson looks like he could turn on the mean real quickly.
Jared Ferguson was basically Terrian Stewart back in the day when he played it.
Exactly.
You don't want to cross that guy. Like, Galt never scared me. And it's not that Ferguson has ever scared me. He hadn't had a reason to, fortunately. But I could tell that he would be really scary if he wanted to.
You know who scared some people? Mike Gentry back in the day.
It's that mustache, man.
I think players would be ready to go to that workout, and they're like, "Oh man, he's going to put us through it today." And I think there's a little bit of that with Jared Ferguson.
Yeah.
And I don't want to dump on Galt in hindsight here, but maybe that wasn't the case all the time with that. So it'll be something interesting to watch. It's one of those things that you make the hire and it's sort of off the radar. You don't see all those off-season workouts, and you don't see the kind of work that they're putting in until it shows up on the field, and you're like, why are they dying in the fourth quarter like that? So we'll see. We'll see how it turns out this year.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, it can take 2 or 3 years to judge the effectiveness of a strength coach from a positive standpoint. Same thing if from a negative standpoint. That's, again, particularly the strength part of it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, and it seems like every single player we've talked to, and you ask them about strength and conditioning and the shape they're in, and they've all praised Jared Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and talked openly, just like, I'm in really, really good shape, and here's how. And I find that part really interesting. While we're on the topic of weight room, Andy, you wrote a story the other day on Kamari Copeland, who he was given the nickname Hulk. He seems like he's back from injury. Seems like he's kind of poised for this potential breakout season. And he didn't have the lunch pail right now, but he did have it for a really long period of time.
6 months.
Yeah.
I think if you're putting money on a breakout candidate this year, I think he's the guy. He is one of the most physically fit players on this roster, and he's 6'3", 285 pounds. He's just like a ball of muscle out there that's coming out there. And it is tough sometimes to get praise out of J.C. Price. He's not just going to dole it out for no reason or just give you platitudes about stuff. When you talk to J.C. Price, he seems like he cannot contain his excitement about Kamari Copeland. So, if he follows through on that promise and is sort of a guy, an anchor in the middle of this line, or just disruptor who can go in there and quote unquote wreck shop like he said he did in this one practice, which led to the Hulk nickname. That could be a real boost for this defensive line, because you lose a guy like Aeneas Peoples, who was great last year, first team All ACC, gets drafted. You wonder how you replace that production. Copeland was a guy who didn't get to play a whole lot last year. He tore triceps muscle in the Rutgers game, and he was out the rest of the year at that point. And he was even kind of buried behind people last year because they had so many experienced linemen in that tackle group. So you put him next to Gilliam. You got a guy like Heisman coming behind them off the bench. Young guys like Emmett Laws, Handchuck, Arius Nash in there. I think the tackle group could be decent, but if you could have that headliner. When was the last time they really had a headliner? I guess Peoples was that to some effect, but before that, are you going back to Ricky Walker?
Tim Settle, Ricky Walker,
Settle.
So that 2016, 2017.
Woody Barron was really good. I'm
good.
trying to think of the other tackles they've had since then, and it's just
Nigel Williams was good.
Jared Hewitt got an honorable mention All ACC or a third team, something like that. But I never felt like he really took over a game like
Sure.
some of those other guys did before that. So it'll be interesting to see if they can have that really standout defensive tackle presence. He's got the potential.
Slight breaking news, David.
The
Battle for Atlantis
Atlantis
has been set. Virginia Tech, Colorado State in the first round.
Yeah.
Tech will play, and then in the second round, Tech would play either St. Mary's or Wichita State. And now back to our regularly scheduled.
Rex-Steiner?
Yeah, Brandon Rexheimer's at Colorado State.
yeah. How about that?
Yeah. On the Copeland topic, I mean, this is the guy who squatted 605 pounds 10 times. Like, and there's a quote you put in your story, Andy, from J.C. Price, where he's like, "It's must-watch TV. What he's doing in the weight room."
Yeah, he posted that on social media, and like J.J. Watt and Randy Moss and Tyrod Taylor like all commented on it. So like, it's an impressive amount of weight. If somebody like J.J. Watt is seeing that and being like, "Wow, that is impressive," like J.J. Watt can move some weight in the weight room too. So that's a pretty impressive number. And some of Copeland's stuff, he can do more than that. I think the guys in the weight room are like, you don't need to. Let's not go all out trying to set a weight room record here. The goal is to get you on the field and to wreck shop out there. You don't need to go try to hurt yourself trying to set the school record in some of this things.
Yeah,
so,
it really doesn't matter whether you can squat 700 pounds or 750 pounds.
605
you're strong
or
at that point.
595 versus 605. It's still pretty impressive. It's a lot of weight. I mean, it's funny when you watch those things. It's like the bar is bending. That's how much weight is on the sides of that. So. Again, it could be a very interesting player to watch.
On the defensive side of the ball, one of the other positions Brent Pry talked about yesterday was cornerback. He said there's a top 4 there. Dante Lovett, Thomas Williams, they're the 2 returners. Isaiah Brown-Murray, the transfer from East Carolina, who will be at nickelback, is right there. And then Caleb Brown, who they got in the spring from Hawaii after the Josh Clark news. He's probably going to be out for the entire season. Chris, what do you make of that top 4 at corner right now?
You know, in the spring, they were pretty much talking about Isaiah Brown-Murray, who we will call IBM from now on, apparently, is his nickname.
I mean, that's a perfect.
That's a great
It's
nickname.
a great nickname. They were talking about him like as a nickel, like as the nickel back, and now they're saying corner. Doesn't mean he won't be playing nickel, but
I still think he's going to be a nickel, the top nickel.
Right.
Like, I think
I
Pry's
agree.
just saying,
but
he's
will he
in that
also
group.
play any on the outside as a corner? I wasn't considering that in the spring, but maybe he could at this point. I don't know. I think Dante Lovett is a really talented player. I think he's got to get a little bit meaner. I think that if there's one thing I could change, he's such a nice guy. I want him to sometimes like hate that receiver across from him, right? But I think the natural talent's there. And he played well last year when he was called upon. He did. Thomas Williams, I think, has physical talent, but lacks experience at this point. Caleb Brown from Hawaii has plenty of experience, and I know they really like the young guys in the program. Josh Clark was a guy who could have started, but he tore his ACL. But a lot of the guys told me a name I recall yesterday from not top newcomers. I want to say 4 or 5 guys mentioned.
It's got to be JoJo Krim, right?
right?
Yeah, the coaches have brought him up. Pry seems to kind of light up a little bit whenever he talks about Krim. And you remember that spring game. He had a pick. It maybe could have had 2.
Could have had 2.
I mean, there was that one where it's like simultaneous possession. I'm like, that didn't look like simultaneous possession.
The one he didn't get the pick on was actually the more impressive play.
Right. The other one was like the last play of the game,
Yes.
right? Just chucking it down.
I mean,
the
he
field.
had a pick and 2 pass breakups in the spring game and had 4 tackles.
He kind of popped in that spring game. Like, remember Brandon Faison when he first got here? And he looked good early in spring games. You're like, that guy is somebody who looks like he could compete for this stuff. So I think they're going to need 1 or maybe 2 of those freshman cornerbacks. I don't know that all 3 will play.
Knowledge is going to play. Priority said that.
Okay. Well, I don't know that all 3 of those play with Krim, Harrell, and Deloach, because you do want to separate them a little bit, and how many reps are you even going to get if you're the 7th cornerback or whatever it is. But I would imagine 1 or 2 of those guys will get on the field.
Knowledge and Krim, in my opinion. Knowledge is playing nickel, or at least he was in the spring.
That would make, with IBM as a starter and Harrell back. I think Joseph Reddish is also there in that nickel back spot. So
I think it'll be those 2 guys, and it sounds like Virginia Tech did sign a really good cornerback class this year.
Yeah, and something Derek Jones told me yesterday, the cornerbacks coach, was when you've got two incumbents like last year with Dorian Strong, who's now with the Buffalo Bills, and Mansour Delane, who's at LSU, and Brent Price said this, there were times where felt like maybe you played two guys too much, and now it's like you've got a handful of guys, maybe not as much experience there, but you can probably spread the reps around a little bit more than you did previously.
I think you spread it around until somebody earns more.
Sure.
I think it's the right way to go.
Well, it's like if you've got Bayshall Tootin, you play him a lot.
Yeah.
If you got Dorian and Mansour, now cornerback's a little bit different because running back you can switch out different packages and stuff like that. Yeah, I think Derek Jones is like, man, if you're playing 1,000 snaps in the season, it's going to show up. You're going to get tired at the end of the games. He thought there were a couple. You mentioned Dorian specifically in the Miami game. End of the game, it's like, that climate, that humidity down there, playing too many snaps, it's going to affect you at the end of the game. I thought some of the guys looked tired in those spots. So coming up with some depth there, I think it will be very critical. You might not have the headliners that you had before, but maybe the 3 and 4 are closer to the 1 and 2 than you've had in the past.
Chris, one of the things Pry also mentioned, safety. I mean, they brought in so many guys, right? That was kind of a spot last year where Jalen Stroman goes out in like the first game of the year, never really had a role. So they got to rely on Quentin Reddish a lot as a true freshman, and it was Jalen Jones and Mose Phillips. It's only Reddish left, but then they went out and brought in Isaiah Cash, Sherrod Koval, Christian Ellis, Tyson Flowers. What do you make of Pry saying that all 5 of those guys are going to have some sort of role?
That's going to be interesting because you do want to have a rotation, but at the same time, you don't want to spread the reps too thin because if you pull a guy in and out of the game, it's one thing if he's a defensive lineman and you're getting hit every play and you can only can't play much more than 30 or 40 snaps in a game. You kind of want your safeties to get lathered up a little bit. Because they're not
lathered. You get good lathering.
Yeah, there you go. And so I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see with that 3 high safety look that they want to do at times. Like, do you consider the nickel to be a safety type player? Probably so, because he's in the slot. He's got to have safety and corner skills. But at times, does the nickel come off for a more traditional safety? Particularly maybe in shorter yardage situations. Maybe you get a guy a little bit bigger who's a little bit better tackler in there. I'm really curious to see how that works out. But I'm trying to think of like a 5-man rotation at safety for Virginia Tech, and I don't remember any time that it's ever happened. Generally speaking, if anything like that has happened, it hasn't been for a good reason. It's because somebody got hurt or people just weren't good enough.
Well, here's the thing. They've been on the other end of the spectrum at safety the last 2 years where 23 Nasir Peoples gets hurt and all of a sudden you're like, well, you're playing a true freshman in Mose Phillips a lot, or Mansour Delane's going to come over and play some safety. Then last year Stroman gets hurt early in the season. You're like, well, okay, Mansour, you might have to take some more snaps. They've been feeling like they've been treading water at that position every year, and just like the boat has a leak and they got buckets and they're trying to dump it over the side, just getting through the season, to the point that I think Pry came into the season is like, we're not doing that again.
Yeah.
We're not going to have to rely on a freshman like they've had the last couple of years. We're not going to be so stingy with our depth that a cornerback has to go over there in some situations. And he's not playing his primary position, so he's probably not as good in that spot. We're going to have 5, hopefully 6 guys potentially if Jordan Bass can do that spot. I don't think he's going to play this year.
I think they'll redshirt.
Yeah, I would imagine they'll redshirt him and look at him next year. But those 5 guys, I think it gives you a lot more comfort there. That even if somebody gets hurt, or somebody gets a targeting suspension, which seems to happen to the safeties.
Happens a lot.
To the safeties a lot more than any other position, it feels like. You're not going to be screwed at that position. You're going to have some guys that know how to play. So it seems like every time we talk with Pry, it's like, what do you need in the transfer portal? It's like, I always like that one more defensive back. There's always one more defensive back that he's looking for in that room. And, I think this offseason they went out there and they got remember 2 more, 3 more defensive backs that can fill that room out.
Well, remember each of the last 2 years they wanted a safety in the portal. Right, and they didn't get any. Well, this year they made up for it. They got 4. Yeah. Well, I do think eventually there will be an odd man out there, but I think it'll take a while for that to settle in. I think you got to get on the field and see who does it in game situations. I will say that I don't think the odd man out will be Tyson Flowers. He's apparently the number one guy.
I mean, let's put it this way. Last spring, I requested to talk to Ben Bell just for a story, which I thought turned out pretty well. Go back and read that Ben Bell story. I thought that one turned out very well. And when they're like, okay, yeah, we'll give you Bell. You want to talk to Tyson Flowers too? Just unprompted, they gave me Tyson Flowers. And this was the first guys I talked to in the spring in the one-on-one interviews. So that tells you right away. I mean, they don't do that for a guy that's not going to play. So that tells you right away that that's a guy they had a pretty good idea that, okay, he's a dude. He's going to stand out. He's going to play this year.
Speaking of Ben Bell, has anybody ever seen him and Joey Sly in the same room
Yeah, he
together?
shaved his head, and
They look awfully similar.
First of all, it's disappointing as somebody who doesn't have a full head of hair here to watch somebody, shave their mane of hair. I mean, he was like a lion with that mane that he had earlier. It's like, wow, that's really cool. And then he comes out with a buzzed head. And it's like, well, that's not as cool.
There were some
I guess if you're in August in the summer, you need a
Probably
sleeker look.
that's a good point.
There were some interesting hairdos yesterday. Some of the offensive linemen had
There was West
mohawks
Virginia.
now.
So, Al Tuner and Lucas Austin, both West Virginia transfers, basically have the same haircut. Well, they're not complete mohawks, but like they're not like the whole '80s mohawks where they're
Yeah, it was like a
8 inches
wide
tall.
mohawk.
So it was
Yeah.
one of the wider mohawk looks.
Yeah, Andy mentioned in the safety conversation targeting, and it felt like for like a 2-year stretch there, it was like even when Nasir Peoples was either hurt or out with targeting, and it's like, and it was like
did Peoples get hit with it? I thought Stroman was more of the
Strowman
targeting guy.
Strowman got targeted, but it was like I think
Shamar
there was like
Connor
a
got a couple,
10-game
I think.
stretch, where it was just like I don't know that I think there was only like 1 or 2 games for a stretch of like maybe in 2023 where Virginia Tech had both of its starting safeties for the entire game.
You can count on one hand the last 2 years when Virginia Tech had its entire 2 deep intact at safety.
Yeah,
Right.
Most likely.
yeah, and now you've got 5 guys, and the youngest guy is Quentin Reddish, who was pretty good last
Yeah,
year
he did a nice job.
for Virginia Tech. There were some, while we're on the topic of safety, there were some position changes probably brought up at the beginning of preseason camp last week. Jordan Bass and Brennan Johnson are now safeties. Noah Jenkins moved the other way.
Jenkins moved to
Noah
to
Jenkins
linebacker.
moved the other way
I confused
to
my
linebacker.
Noahs in my question.
A
And
lot of
probably
people
looked at
do
me
that.
like I had 2 heads. When I was-
What do you guys make of those position changes?
I think Jordan Bass, when Virginia Tech originally brought him in, they didn't know who the defensive coordinator was going to be. He played a star linebacker role for Pitt. And it was not exactly like Tech's star role, but there were a lot of similarities. Like, he was not an inside linebacker, right? So I never viewed him as like an inside linebacker for Virginia Tech, but then the star linebacker position disappeared. So where does he play? He played safety in high school, and he's lost like 20 pounds since that injury.
He looks
had.
like a safety.
Right.
He never
looks
looked like a linebacker.
Right,
Even when
not here. He looked like
even
one
when he
at
first
Pitt.
got here, he didn't look like a linebacker.
Exactly. So I think that's probably the right move for him. And, maybe if he puts weight back on, they can reassess. Maybe he can feel like an outside linebacker role, because I want to talk about that in a little bit. There's like a little case of semantics and which guys are playing which position. But, I think safety for him, I think that's the right move. And he'll redshirt because he's going to have to learn coverage now.
Yeah.
I mean, not that he didn't know it before, but it's going from
different.
linebacker to safety. It's a lot different. Yeah.
Andy, one of the other stories you've written just since we've last did a podcast was the Claytor Lake story about the team bonding, and there's been a lot of chat about how this team is tighter and last year's group was clicky. Just if you want to go into a little bit of detail, share a little bit about your Claytor Lake story and the team bonding activities that they went through.
Yeah, I think, when I talked to Pry in June, he said they sort of moved up a lot of this team building stuff that they do. It's typically an August thing when everybody reconvenes. And I think he looked at this roster and he goes, we got 30 new transfers and 20 freshmen, 19, minus the one that left. Close to 50 new players on this team. Like, how can you be together if you don't really know the people around you? So he mentioned in that interview in June that they were going to do this sort of a one-day, sort of an old school, I don't want to call it boot camp, but like going to the old Boy Scouts center at Claytor Lake that's like, do a bunch of workouts. They're like flipping tires and logs and stuff like that. I'm sure Ferguson had something in mind for how they were doing an old school type thing. And then, they all checked in their phones before they went. So it's 24 hours with no phones, which, all you listeners out there, when was the last time you went 24 hours without looking at your phone? I'd probably get a little jittery if I was doing that myself. And it sounds like some of the players had a bit of initial shock when he told them what they were going to do. But they go out there and it's just sort of like, learn who your teammates are. Get to know these guys. Have some, Kelvin Gilliam described it as, I'm going to be I don't want to talk the whole time because there are going to be times you're going to get sick of hearing my voice. So maybe some people who don't speak up all the time do this. A couple people mentioned Takai Heath getting up and talking in front of the team. Ben Bell shared his story with the team. It sounds like he hadn't necessarily done that before. So just sort of a team building thing. And I wrote the story and I'm like, oh, they went out to Clear Lake and people are like, they did that last year and it didn't do anything. It's like, okay, well, they weren't going there to go on, jet skiing by Bud's house, right? That wasn't the purpose of this trip. It was more of a work trip, team bonding type thing, and you're not going to get that team stuff in 24 hours. This has been an ongoing process throughout the off season. I just thought it was kind of an interesting little jaunt that they took out there in an effort to get a little bit tighter as a team. And will that show up on the field? I don't know. It can't hurt. It can't hurt if you're in the fourth quarter and you have maybe a little bit tighter bond with somebody who's on the field with you. I would hope that would show up on the field.
Yeah, I agree. And you, Chris, you have any thoughts on that? No?
No, I mean, I just I think there's something to be said for getting guys together like that.
Yeah.
And everybody's used to the weight room, but there's nothing wrong with going out there and just lifting, good old-fashioned dead weight. That's not that aren't. I remember like during COVID, my personal trainer had me outdoors like pushing his Jeep, things like that.
Was he just out of gas and he needed to get somewhere?
No, it was actually just that little. There is a slight incline in the parking lot outside Anytime Fitness, and he had me push it up that incline.
Was this Mitch who was having you?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. That was actually pretty fun. And yes, it's a nice full body workout. So a lot of things like that. And my hamstring exercises were used. I used a tire, I'm not even going to try to describe it.
Yeah.
I'd use my spare tire from my car to do hamstring lifts. But there's a lot of cool stuff you could do even without weights. And you actually kind of get into it a little bit more. It's like I'm not in the weight room. I'm just using like natural things to make myself stronger.
And I should mention that story. Kelvin Gilliam brought this up when we talked to him at the ACC kickoff. It was like, it was kind of cliquish last year. And it wasn't bad chemistry necessarily, but it was like, their offense hung out and the defense hung out. There wasn't a lot of mingling between the two. And he's like, well, look how that turned out last year. I don't know if that's completely the reason, but it perhaps contributed to the whole thing.
Nick, do you want to tell people what Pop Watson told you yesterday?
Yeah, Pop told me yesterday that there were a handful of players on the team last year that, I'm trying to remember the exact wording, but essentially talked about how there's a lot of guys on the team last year that were more focused on making the league and their individual stats last year than they were about winning. And even Kelvin Gilliam at AC Media Day said he was one of those guys.
Well, he said he's like, I was playing for stats. I was thinking about the NFL. So.
And Drone said, I was trying to play hero ball. Right? Some of the culprits that are still here have admitted their mistakes. Which, I mean, I wish the Hokies could do last year all over again, of course. But at this point, all you can do is correct what you know to be wrong, and sounds like those guys have done that.
Nick, thanks for sharing that. There were some nice little tidbits we got out yesterday. Something else that we touched on that Pry talked about, Sam Sifkas talked about, and this is where the Wofford example came up, was situational football. And, of course, Sam Sifkas comes from the NFL, formerly Wofford, D3, but in the NFL they preach and harp on situational football, and that's something that Brent Pry and Sifkas and even Philip Montgomery said they're talking about constantly in their program. And Sifkas brought up a real-life example from a Wofford game a handful of years ago where it was like a 4th and short situation, and his group basically needed one stop to get off the field, and a linebacker missed an assignment, didn't peel with the running back. Wyoming, the team they were playing, converted, ended up scoring a play or two later, and they lost the game. Right. What do you make of the situational football
I thought that was an interesting example because, like, whether it's the end of the game or whether it's in the middle of the second quarter, if a linebacker misses assignment and the guy runs for a long touchdown, it's 7 points either way, right? So don't miss your assignments. So when I think special situations, I think things like score a really high percentage of touchdowns in the red zone and be good in 2 minutes. Like if you can score one extra touchdown in the red zone, or even just like get one extra stop in 2 minute drill. How many close games did Virginia Tech play last year? You know, even if everything else had been the same, if they had just been better in special situations last year, they would have won 3 or 4 more games. Even with bad conditioning, even with bad coordinating and all that. Of course, probably the bad coordinating and bad conditioning is probably some of the reasons they did fail in those special situations. So it's not that Virginia Tech was like bad in special situations last year. It's just they had bad coordinators, so of course they're going to be bad in special situations, right? So hopefully that's fixed itself.
Can't be worse.
Right.
Here's a special situation. You're up 21 at Syracuse.
Don't lose.
Don't sell out from a 60-yard touchdown pass.
Right.
Guy breaks free on a screen pass. I wanted to ask you, what do you think this defensive scheme, this alignment is? If you had to describe Virginia Tech's defensive alignment.
I'm glad you brought this up, Andy. All right, so on the online roster, they list Ben Bell, James Jeanette, Keyshawn Burgos, and Jason Abbey as defensive linemen, defensive ends, right? In media day yesterday, they break everybody out by positions. Those 4 guys were with the linebackers. Right.
Yeah.
So basically, there's going to be an edge position. You can consider it an end. You can consider an outside linebacker. It's all semantics. I'm going to consider it just a defensive end because I think he's going to be on the line of scrimmage. And I consider a defensive end someone who is lined up on the line of scrimmage, whether he's standing up or whether he's got his hand in the ground. That's just my personal opinion.
And these are guys that Sean Quinn is coaching.
Right.
And he's the outside linebackers coach.
The outside linebackers coach, exactly. So either Virginia Tech's going to have a smaller defensive end who you can also consider an outside linebacker. So smaller or more athletic, depending. So that's going to be Bell, Jeanette, Burgos, and Jason Abbey.
Clatterbaugh in that group.
Yeah, and I think the other defensive end is going to be your bigger options, like James Jajonkum, Elijah Fall, and Asen Stevens. I would expect that guy to probably have his hand in the dirt more times than not. But basically, Tech has 2 unique defensive end positions now, kind of like they did back in the day with the stud and the end. I don't know whether like one of them's going to be aligned to the wide side and the other's going to be aligned to the short side all the time. So for me, Virginia Tech's going to be running a 4-2-5, but some people might consider that smaller edge guy an outside linebacker, in which case it's a 3-3-5.
3-3-5.
It's all semantics these days because sometimes if your safety is going to come up and line up, you're going to be in a 4-4. I would call it a 4-2-5, but it's all semantics.
It looked more like a 4-2-5 in the spring game.
Yeah.
The way they'd line up because that guy was often on the line. But then again, they didn't do much in terms of versatility. Right. There was no variety to the kind of stuff they called in the spring game. So we're not getting the full scope of what they're going to do. But it'll be interesting to see how they label that, like in Athlon and stuff. They tell the scheme. It's like, well, what is the scheme they run? 3-3-5 perhaps? It's going to be different from what it was in the past.
Yeah, I'm picturing, Chris, you know, they come out kind of like a base 4-2-5 look, but where you really only have 2 inside linebackers, probably Woodson, Keller, at least to start, or use them as at least placeholders. And where if you maybe give the same look, but you can sub personnel if you want. Like you throw an extra, like say you want to play with 2 bigger defensive ends, you can do that. Or you want to play with 2 smaller edge guys, you can do right. Like
I think
where you give the same look, but you're messing around with your personnel and who's actually on the field.
Cephas talked about yesterday about how, you know, you have to be able to game plan for specific individual opponents. Like you might see some games where this defensive end maybe only gets 12 snaps because he's not a great matchup against the team they're facing and what they do. The next week he might get 30 because he's a great matchup against your next opponent. So I would expect the Tech defense to how it looks on a week-to-week basis. I would expect more variety than we've seen in the past.
I want to see a 4-1-6 or something like that. They're going to bring all sorts of stuff out there on the field. It could be interesting to watch.
Yeah. One of the last things before we get to an ad read, Chris, you at the beginning of fall camp, you always kind of write a story, just your overall thoughts before, or preseason camp before we get going. Last year, you described it as a window of opportunity.
Yeah.
This year, you described the upcoming season as a chance for redemption. You kind of want to explain why a little bit?
Man, I think Pry made some really bad hires to start his tenure, and he certainly realizes that because those guys are gone now, right? So this season is a chance for redemption for him. I think so much was expected of Kyron Drones last year, and he came out and tried to play hero ball. You know, he spent his summer working out with future NFL quarterbacks. I do think there was a certain extent of him thinking about his NFL future and trying to play like that. And that's a tough line to toe these days. Because the fact of the matter is, like, you're getting paid to win football games for Virginia Tech. You're not getting paid by the NFL yet. And as far as I'm concerned, as a Hokie Club member, if you're getting paid to play football for Virginia Tech, then, you know, you've got to run Virginia Tech's offense and play within yourself. And yes, hopefully you make the NFL, but, like, don't change your play style to try and make the NFL while you're playing for Virginia Tech. You know, so there's a lot of things like that make college football, a little bit more complicated than it used to be, especially with now guys that are getting paid. I get madder at things like that these days. But I think those guys, like Drones, knows what he did last year, and I think he knows who he is as a player. Like, I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. He just does not strike me as an NFL quarterback, and that's fine because Brian Randall was ACC Player of the Year and probably my favorite all-time Virginia Tech player, and he wasn't an NFL quarterback, right? Maurice DeShazo was third in the country as a junior in passing efficiency, not an NFL quarterback, right? Tech has had a good quarterback. Gerard Evans was a hell of a player in 2016.
You can have good success
You can go through a bunch of teams.
Exactly.
Tim
exactly
Tebow was
right.
not an NFL quarterback.
Exactly.
Despite winning a playoff game once, he flamed out pretty quick.
But you know what? He was the best player in college football, right? This is college football. Just be yourself out there. And I think he realizes that he's going to put himself in the best position for his future, whether that's in the NFL or not, if he just goes out there and acts like himself. And so there's a chance for redemption for him this year. Our fans are still really angry about last year, and I don't blame them, but I'm also not going to, you can't change it at this point. I think Pry has made all the right moves since then, or at least most of the right moves. I think he's gotten it as close to being right as you can if you're Virginia Tech with a good budget, but not an elite budget. So it is a fresh start, but at the same time, you don't want to give too many chances of redemption. So if it doesn't work out this year, then we'll see. Yeah. But I'm optimistic about certain things in the program. I think Tech's going to be much better coached this year. I do believe that their heads are on straight this year, and I do think there was some selfishness on the team last year, even if it wasn't intentional selfishness. And I don't necessarily think the coaches did a great job of handling that. But the same thing happened to Virginia Tech in 2003, which was a talented football team, got up to being ranked number 3 in the country, I think, and then just tanked down the stretch and went. I think they lost 4 of their last 5 and went 8-5.
Yeah.
And then there were some people picked them as low as 9th next year in the ACC, and they won the ACC next year because they got rid of a guy who was a great player but was a head case in the locker room. And they just had better team cohesiveness, and won the league. And I'm not predicting Virginia Tech's going to win the ACC this year because Florida State was down back then and Clemson was down back then. But I think they have an opportunity to have a better year.
You mentioned the coordinators. Is it possible that they sort of stumbled into really good upgrades at both of those spots. I mean, I know the defensive coordinator change was intentional, but probably had no intention of changing the OC until Tyler Bowen left for Ohio State. Yeah. And you look at Montgomery and his history, and you go, man, I think on paper I'd rather have that guy than Bowen. And
it's possible.
Well, I think Bowen is a good coach. He's a young coach. He's still developing as a coach. I just think as a coordinator, you need somebody with sort of a focused vision of what you want to do. And sometimes I think with Bowen, he tried to do a little bit too much. You could even hear it when you talk to him in interviews, and perhaps this is a stretch that his interview, the way he interviews is the way he would coach. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but when you ask him to describe something in an interview, you look at the block of text that he uses to describe it, and it's a great answer, but it is also like 600 words long. And it is just a lot of thoughts going at once. And I wonder if that creeped into some of the coaching sometimes, that, you try and you got to remember this, and then just, paralysis by analysis. There's so much stuff there that you're thinking about that you're not just going out there and playing. And Montgomery is certainly more economical with his words in interviews. And I you got to teach quick, simple concepts if you're trying to play fast like he has in the past. So, I think there is an upgrade on the defensive side. I think with Cephas, I think he's somebody who's done it before. That was always sort of the shortcoming with Marv. I think the adjustment side of things that Cephas could bring to the table is going to be an upgrade there. And offensively, I think that could be a step up. I mean, Montgomery he was a Broyles finalist at one point, I think, with Baylor. This is a guy who's been through some battles and seen some stuff before. I don't think either of these coaches will be overwhelmed if they have to adjust in the middle of the game, or they see something, it's like, oh, that's not what we expected. How do we change what we're doing to figure it out? So, I think just those two elements alone, if they hit on these coordinator hires, that could be a significant thing in this team's record.
Montgomery's been an offensive coordinator for like 12 to 15 years or so, including the years he was a head coach.
Yeah,
he was an offensive
head
coordinator.
coach.
Like he's seen everything at this point, right? I think good Tyler Bowen was really good. Bad Tyler Bowen was really bad. I don't know that like good Montgomery will be better than good Bowen, but like I don't think there's like a bad Montgomery. I think the consistency level.
The floor is probably higher.
When they hired Bowen, though, I mean, like Pry's original vision for the staff, you could sort of see what he was trying to do. Bowen is a young coordinator, but Brad Glenn was quarterback's coach, had been a coordinator before. I almost kind of looked at him as a co-coordinator at that point when they brought him in. Joe Rudolph had been a coordinator. It's like you have these veteran voices in the room that could carry him along, and then after one season, those are no longer there. And Brad Glenn leaves for Cincinnati to become a coordinator. Rudolph leaves for Notre Dame for obviously a much better job. They played the national title game here last year. And so you lose those two things and, replace it with Ron Crook, who didn't have that sort of coordinator mindset, certainly as an O-line coach. And, didn't even really replace the quarterback's coach.
Right. They just made Bowen quarterback's coach.
Made him the quarterback's coach. And, so it just the original plan didn't play out the way he had hoped it would. But, right now I feel like there's a little more order to the way they have the coordinator positions in there and the experience that they have with that.
Really quick, you like Cephas so far being a walk-around? Yeah. I know the walk. Somebody asked you in the Q&A last week about the walk-around title, and I mean, it seems like it lets him be as hands-on as he wants.
I think so. He's such a knowledgeable football guy that if there are any deficiencies in coaching on the defensive side of the ball, that means, if he identifies it, he can spend more time with that position, right? Means he's not going to be married to any position group. Like J.C. Price doesn't need any help on the defensive line, right? He's an experienced coach, but you've still got some relative inexperience at linebacker and safety amongst those coaches, right? So if you feel the need to spend more time at those spots, just to make sure things are being handled correctly, you can do that. Plus, I think a lot of coaches move on to the NFL. Like you can make more money as a college coach, but you also you aren't working as much because you don't have to spend the entire year recruiting, right?
It's just football.
It's just football.
I think that's appealing to a lot of guys. I just want to coach ball.
Yeah. Darryl Tapp was a great recruiter the one year he was at Virginia Tech, but he was always going to the NFL, man. He didn't like recruiting, and I wouldn't like recruiting either. But now, you can have as many coaches as you want. And Cephas doesn't have to coach a position, and he doesn't have to be an off-campus recruiter.
It sounds like the dream.
Right.
Football.
I'm right. I get paid more money because I'm in college, but I don't have to recruit, except unless when they come on campus, of course, which isn't a big deal.
And it's a boost for. I mean, he's a young coach. It's a boost for his resume being a coordinator.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think he's a massive upgrade.
Yeah.
Tracy Rocker at Auburn, when I covered their famous college player and stuff, is like, did not like the recruiting aspect of that. And I guess told one reporter, like, I'm going out begging now. So I have to go out and beg these 17-year-olds to come play for me. It's like, that's got to be just demoralizing as an adult, like an accomplished adult professional. It's like, I got to go. My career is based on the whims of these 17 and 18-year-olds. And now it's even more crazy with all the money being thrown around.
Well, I actually think this is where the transfer portal is a good thing. I hate the way grown-up 40-year-old men get on social media and just suck up to these 16 and 17-year-olds. Like, their brains aren't even developed, and you're telling them they're the best thing ever. Most of them are 3 stars. So then they become, Jaden Anderson, and they show up on campus, and they're like, am I going to play as a true freshman? No, you're behind 9 guys. Oh, well, I'm out. It's that.
And I want more money.
And I want more money, by the way. It's the first day on campus. I want more money, and if I'm not playing as a true freshman, I'm done. Well, good luck with life, brother. Because you recruit all these transfers these days, like, most recruits don't have as much leverage. Like 90% of your recruits are 3 stars. Your 5 stars and your upper level 4 stars still have plenty of leverage, don't get me wrong. But your average 3-star recruit cannot act like that these days. Because you're just like, oh, fine, we're just not going to recruit you. We'll just take a portal guy. He's more advanced than you anyway, right? So I actually think from that standpoint of it, I like the transfer portal and what it's done, because some of these guys, and it's not their fault, it's the adults in the room, that cause it. But I'm glad to see some of that coming back around.
I got one more topic for us. First, we gotta slip an ad read in here. This episode of the Tech Sideline podcast is presented by Tyrus Homes. Are you ready for a custom home tailored to your distinctive lifestyle? At Tyrus Homes, a leading custom home builder in the New River Valley, we pride ourselves on crafting exceptional residences that our clients love to call home. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a growing family in search of more room, an active adult seeking a relaxing retreat, or looking for a higher-end custom home that offers luxury and sophistication, we have the perfect solution for you. Discover how we can bring your dream home to life at tyrushomes.com. That's TYRIS homes.com. Last topic I have, which everybody loves to talk about, is scheduling. The Virginia Tech and Old Dominion football series, they announced changes last week. 7 games remained on the schedule between the Hokies and Monarchs through 2031, but 4 of those, 3 contests in Norfolk in 2027, 2029, and 2031, and the 2028 one in Blacksburg have been canceled. They'll still meet in Lane Stadium 3 times in 25 this year, 26 and 2030. What do you make, Chris, of the ODU series, and it provides Hokies a little bit more flexibility?
It was originally signed because of money, and now it's going away because of money. These buy games these days, a lot of them cost $1.5 to $2 million, and ODU is willing to sign for $250,000 a game, right? And even when you have to play them on the road, there's a bunch of Tech fans there. So that's the reason the series was signed in the beginning. Same with the Liberty series, quite frankly. They're cheap. And it's like Virginia Tech has to find ways to save money if you want to afford better coaching staffs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now that TV payouts from the ACC are going to be handled differently, with like 60% of it being tied to what network you're playing on
And viewership
and things like that. That's the reason the series is going away, or at least the road games are going away. The home games, which are now more appropriately priced, of course. They didn't technically buy out of the series, but that's basically what it is. They bought out the road games by paying ODU a higher price to play at home. But yeah, it gives more flexibility, and I'll be interested to see if anything still gets done with next year's schedule, because ODU's off of it, but you still also got James Madison and VMI.
No, ODU's on it for next year.
For next year, they're right, because that is home.
Yeah,
right.
You got JMU and ODU and VMI, and then Maryland.
At Maryland.
Right. Something's got to be. You can't play all three of those smaller in-state schools in the same year, in my opinion. So I think Tech's going to make a lot of TV money this year, because they've got a lot of. They've got high-profile games. Yeah, they've got Louisville, Florida State, Miami, South Carolina. South Carolina being on a Sunday, a lot of people are going to watch that game. They've got a Friday night game against Cal, so I think they're going to do well. Hopefully, West Virginia picks up the phone, because that series has got.
We'll talk about that in a sec. Andy, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think ODU that series was on life support before the new revenue sharing, or the unequal revenue sharing thing they're doing in the ACC, and then as soon as they decided on that, this was done. And you mentioned that 2030 game, the buyout on that one, if it's before 2028, is $200,000. So I wouldn't write that one in pen right now, maybe pencil at this point. But it kind of depends on what they can do with these 4 schedule slots that they've opened up now. Can you get West Virginia on there? Can you do it in a neutral site? Charlotte's been mentioned. Commanders are building a new stadium up there. Please, whatever you do not go back to FedEx or whatever they're calling it now. I don't want to go cover a game there and sit in 5 hours of traffic, and that would be awful.
That West Virginia game there was awful.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great game.
Right.
But then you sat traffic for 5 hours.
They wouldn't
afterwards.
open the lots till like 4 hours before kickoff.
Yeah, that was a bad scene.
Yeah.
So if they build a new Commanders stadium,
yeah,
it sounds like they're going to, but red tape and all that stuff, who knows when that will be. That'd be a great place to do that. That'd be a fun game to see those two fan bases that have a presence in that area going to something like that. Can you get some home and homes with anybody? And those are tough to do. And these neutral site games are pretty lucrative. You can make more than you can on the home game. You obviously don't have the costs associated with running a game on top of that. So it's just sort of a pure payout type situation. They've got some slots now to work with, and 27. They've got Liberty, Maryland, Notre Dame. We'll see if those Notre Dame games stick. There's some talk about revamping that whole thing. 27 and 28 is Liberty, Maryland, Notre Dame. You get further out, 2029, Liberty, Arizona, Maryland. Arizona, we'll see if that sticks on the schedule. Yeah. I know there's Desiree Reed-Francois is the AD at Arizona, formerly worked at Tech, so that's somebody that Whit Babcock knows very well in this industry, so I don't know if they necessarily want to cancel that series. At the same time, is that going to draw eyeballs, a game at Arizona? BYU will.
Yeah.
Regardless of where BYU is playing, there's going to be a lot of Mormons watching that game.
Yeah.
They have a very good TV following in that whole thing. So, this is sort of a whole new world in scheduling and how they have to approach this thing. And the other side of it is you have to have a willing scheduling partner. This isn't like the NCAA football game where you just click the button and Tennessee agrees to play you in a home and home.
Because it's super fantastic.
From my conversations with people, Tennessee just doesn't seem interested in a home and home with Virginia Tech at all. Just doesn't ever go anywhere whenever it's brought up. So it's not as easy as just saying, I want to play this team, and you make it work. You got to find the schedules that work, find the slotting that works, get people that are agreeable. In the past, sometimes these matchups have been made when there's no head coaches, when they're still searching for head coaches on these teams, because that's one element you don't need to worry about, is the coach being like, I don't want to play them in this game. That's sometimes why you schedule it out 7, 8, 9, 10 years in advance. It's like, well, okay, scheduled Alabama in, what was it,
2032 or something?
2034 and 35. It's like, well, Nick Saban ain't going to be around in 2034 and 35 coaching the Crimson Tide, so maybe it's a little bit more acceptable to do that. So there's all sorts of things you have to manage with scheduling, but this ODU series, it ran its course.
What about that Wisconsin series?
I was going to say, they could move the Wisconsin series up
31 and 32. I'm hoping.
So I just went and looked on our future schedules page, and there was a note, because we have stamped it.
Yeah.
There's a note from August 11th, 2003. It's essentially, it says extensive Virginia Tech football schedules info dropped from the Richmond Times-Dispatch, blah, blah, blah. And there's a note in here, still scheduled our games against Wisconsin in 2008, 2009. And that Wisconsin series got pushed back.
But they are never going to Nebraska
They are never going to let Andy cover at Virginia Tech, Wisconsin.
2003. I am 2 years out of college.
Right, I was in
at
college.
the University of Wisconsin.
So
Madison.
that was what date? August
11th.
So I was just starting my junior year of college.
I'm 2 years out of college in 2003. When they play this game, hopefully in 2031, I will be 29 years out of college. This is a ridiculous delay. I mean, I can't believe it's been like there. 20, I guess it'd be 28. I'm doing the math wrong here, but
who's counting at that point?
Yeah, exactly. That's a long time. So, just play that game. That'd be such a fun matchup.
Yeah.
Madison. I mean, Virginia Tech fans would love Madison going up there. This is a series that should be played home and home. Like Michigan should have, like Penn State should have. Those series went by the wayside. This would be a really fun Big Ten ACC. Well, who knows what it'll be in 2031. Right. Currently, it's a Big Ten ACC matchup.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see if Virginia Tech can get somebody, who Tech can get to fill those spots. We got the contract courtesy David Teal was.
Well, Virginia Tech came through with the same document.
Oh, really?
Teal sent us
you got it. Okay.
Yeah,
well, David Teal shared it with Andy and I first, which was very kind of him to get the actual numbers. The Hokies are paying ODU $400K for the 2025 game, which is in September this year. $1.1 million for the 2026 game. $1.275 million for the 2020. Or for the 2030 game. And then the men's basketball, there's a men's basketball game attached to it. Mike Jones, of course, is the current head coach at Old Dominion, a former Virginia Tech associate head coach. There's in there, Virginia Tech men's basketball will play Old Dominion at home before the 2027-28 season, I believe. So, and that's $95,000. So in all, it's about $2.87 million is what Tech is paying Old Dominion for
3 home games, basically.
For 3 home games and a men's basketball.
That's actually, in these days, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. So, anything else before we go? What do you guys have coming up on Tech Sideline next week or so? I think the next football availability we have is like next Wednesday.
Tech should be getting a commitment today. In fact, by the time you're listening to this, they probably already got a commitment from a quarterback, unless he surprised everybody and committed somewhere else. I won't say his name just in case he commits somewhere else, but that's coming up here in about 4 minutes. And then I've got my tight ends article coming today, Friday Q&A tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Just more camp coverage, whatever they let us see.
We have 2 more media accesses?
Well, 2 or 3. I can't remember.
Maybe.
That's just the camp portion, but it'll be mostly individual drills. So I don't know how much we're going to glean from the preseason practice that we see this year.
Yeah, I've got some basketball stuff. I think after this, I'll write I got to finish writing they came out with, of course, as you mentioned, the Battle for Atlanta stuff. I got to do that. And then it sounds like the women's basketball non-conference schedule is coming soon. So,
yes.
So potential basketball news coming. And I have an interview I was trying to set up way back in June or in July that never got set up with basketball. Chester Frazier that I'm going to try to get set up now that I'm back in town. So anyway, thank you to our presenting sponsor, First Bank and Trust Company. And that'll do it for this podcast. For Chris Coleman, for Andy Bitter, for Nick Brown, and for Will Stewart, who walked in the room and was just snapping some photos with us on the set. I'm David Cunningham. This has been episode 427 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Next Thursday is going to be our first video podcast with a new set. Make sure you tune in. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next week.